Okay, so this is multiplying algebraic expressions basically. So for the first one, you have three factors in there. So each expression inside the parentheses is a factor. So let's break down the factor in itself. Okay. So for instance, you have 4a cubed. The 4, that's your coefficient. Okay, coefficient. Your a, that's your variable. And then your 3 is your exponent. Now, when you multiply an expression like 4a cubed, you need to multiply coefficient times coefficient, and then the variable with exponent times variable with exponent. And when you're multiplying expression with the same basis, so for instance, you have x squared, that is an expression with a variable with exponent, and you multiply this with x to the power of 3. Okay, now they both have x's as base, so you just copy the base and then you add the exponent, so that's going to be x to the 5. Now what about if you have 2x to the 3 times negative 3x to the fourth? Well, now you have coefficients 2 and coefficients negative 3. You need to multiply them, so that's going to be negative 6. And then the x cubed times x to the fourth, they have the same basis, so therefore you just gonna copy the base and then you add the exponent. Now what about if you have 4x to the second to the sixth y times 2x to the negative 3 y squared. Okay, so now you have coefficients again. So 4 times 2, that's going to be 8. The x and the x, they are the same basis, so you copy the x, but their exponents you still need to add. So 6 plus negative 3, that's going to be 3. And then you have a second variable y times y squared. Remember, if you don't have an exponent on your y, that means there's a 1 in there, right? So that's going to be y to the power of 3, 1 plus 2. So that's going to be 3. So that's how you multiply expressions with coefficients and variables. So let's try this one out on number 1. So you have three factors here. So you need to multiply all the coefficients. 4 times negative 3 times 5, so that's going to be negative 60, right? And then now you have a cubed times a squared times a cubed. So you need to copy a and then add all the exponents because you're multiplying them. So therefore the rule is you add the exponents. So 3 plus 2, that's 5, plus 3, that's 8. So that is your final answer for that one. All right, so let's move on to the next one. All right, so well, this second one is a little bit different because the first one, they're all monomials, they're just one terms. However, on the second one, you have monomial here and then you have a trinomial. So that means you have one term, second term, third term. Okay, so what you're gonna do there is you need to do distributive property. So I'm gonna do distributive property here down below. So when you distributive property, okay, so for instance, you have 3x squared times, I don't know, maybe 4x cubed minus 6x plus 2. Okay, so now you have three terms inside the parentheses, and you know there are terms because they're separated by a plus or a minus. So what do I mean by that? So for instance, this minus sign right there and that plus sign right there, it separates this, that. So they are all different terms. So therefore you have three terms. That's why it's called trinomial. Now if you only have two terms, that's going to be called binomial. All right, so now that we understand you have three terms there, what you're going to do is you're going to have to distribute this monomial right here outside, multiply the each one of them. Okay, all right, so let's try to do that. So, and the rule still is the same. Okay, so 3x squared times 4x cubed. You need to multiply the numbers, the coefficients, that's 12. X squared times x cubed, that's going to be x to the fifth because when you multiply, remember you add exponent. Next, so you're done with the first term. Now let's move on to the second term. 3x squared times negative 6x. So 3 times negative 6, be mindful of the sign. So that's going to be negative 18. And then x squared times x. Remember this x here does not have an exponent. That means exponent of 1 So x squared times x to the 1, that's going to be x to the 3. And then lastly, so you're done with the second term. Now you do the last term. So 3 times 2, that's going to be positive 6. That 2 does not have an x, so therefore you just, that means x to the 0 really. All right, so now you do x to the second times x to the 0, that's going to be x to the second. So if you don't have an x, that means exponent of 0. You still have to add exponent. So this is the answer to this particular question. So now let's try to answer your number 2. Okay, so we will have to distribute negative 4 to x squared, negative 4 to negative 4x, and negative 4 to 11. Okay, so now let's do this one, negative 4x. So this x right here does means that there's an exponent 1, right? And then this 4x on the other side, there's also an exponent 1. The x squared here does not have a coefficient that's visible, but that means it has a coefficient of 1. So now when you multiply negative 4x times 1x squared, negative 4 times 1, that's going to be negative 4. X times x squared is going to be x cubed because you need to add 1 and 2. Now let's do negative 4 times negative 4x. That's going to be positive 16 x to the power of 2. X to the 1 times x to the 1, so 1 plus 1, all right? And then negative 4x times 11, that's going to be negative 44x. Okay, there is no x on the 11, so therefore you just copy that x. All right, so now we're good. Okay, so now we will do number 3. So number 3 is like an extended multiplication. Okay, I probably will stop the video here for number 2. I'm gonna create a different video for number 3 because that's a little bit more extensive. Okay, so my let's do an example on number 1, okay, that I'd like you to try. So 5x to the 4th times negative 2 times 6x squared. Okay, so try to answer this on your own, and I'm gonna leave the answer in the comments. Okay, all right, now for example number 2, try this. 2x cubed times negative 3x squared minus x plus 4. Okay, and I'm gonna leave the answer of this one again in the comments.